Please make Richard and Lisa welcome.
Is that on now? Okay, right. Okay, because I'm a wasp, I'm going to hand over the presentation to Lisa. So all my work and preparation just went out the door in the last 15 minutes. So I'll let Lisa do the whole presentation. You'll be pleased to know that most of the MLA leadership team, men like myself, are in the minority. We need diversity, we need some more men on the team. Anyway, look, what we're going to talk to this afternoon about is True Aussie. True Aussie was developed as a brand for Australian red meat in our global markets, and only in our global markets. As you'd understand, Australian red meat's quickly approaching 75% of the red meat produced in Australia in beef terms is exported, and in lamb it's rising to 65%. So this is how our journey in the red meat industry has evolved since about 2013 when True Aussie was launched in market. Now, as a matter of interest, National Farmers came along about 12 months ago and said, we want to consider True Aussie as the brand for the whole of agriculture. Now, the red meat industry hasn't yet given up True Aussie to the whole of agriculture, but we're willing to explore perhaps the possibilities of True Aussie becoming a brand for the whole of agriculture. The issues to the red meat industry and the peak industry councils that represent the bulk of the stakeholders in our industry is that the red meat industry's had lifetime traceability for beef. So 95% of all livestock in terms of beef slaughtered in Australia have lifetime traceability. And we also have livestock production assurance. This is just on farm assurance systems, but livestock production assurance, 98% of red meat producers in Australia are signed up to that program, which, as many of you would know, is an audit on farm. So they're the things that we're doing, and Lisa will now just run through how this brand evolved and all the sensory testing and details behind the brand. We're not saying that it should be the brand for agriculture. We just had it in market because of what Lisa's going to demonstrate why it evolved to that way. Thank you, Lisa.
I probably don't need to explain any more about Meat and Livestock Australia, but it is worth noting right down the bottom we're a producer-owned, not-for-profit organisation. We're not the industry representative body. So as Richard touched on in his opening comments, export markets are absolutely critical to the Australian red meat industry. Over 60% of all red meat is exported, and we're fast approaching 75% of all beef being exported. And you can see there a map of where our product goes, and we have the tonnage and the dollars. So from Meat and Livestock Australia as the service provider to industry, our job is to provide a combination of market access and marketing services to industry. It's quite straightforward what's there on the screen. We focus on supporting trade access and free trade agreements. We focus on helping to deal with technical trade barriers. We also focus with marketing on business development and building brands. And that's the focus of my presentation this afternoon. So within Meat and Livestock Australia, our job in the marketing team is to translate data and information and consumer insight into compelling marketing programs that are about driving demand for Australian red meat. The information and the data tells us what? Drilling into that tells us why. Why do consumers behave and buy the way they do? Our strategy tells us how to attack the opportunity. Programs and initiatives are what we execute in market to realise the opportunity. And of course, no program is complete without an evaluation at the end. So the development of the True Aussie brand started with what? What's been happening in global markets? It's a bit of a dark picture. No news to anyone in this room, I'm sure, but we've been marketing red meat to the world for over 40 years and certainly have been exporting for in excess of 80. But over time, when you participate in so many markets, it's only natural that you start to look a little bit fragmented, and that the Australian offer was being represented in a different way in each market and promoting different benefits. But things have started to change. In a number of the key markets we operate in, we've got large, major customers. They've become more sophisticated. They operate across markets and across regions, and they're looking for brands. Why are they looking for brands? Brands, and brands that consumers trust, brands that tell a story, will typically command a price premium. And they're also the products consumers demand. So our customers are asking a little bit more from us. And over this time, consumers have become increasingly sophisticated also. Experiencing a foreign food culture is now the third most popular driver for tourism. People love eating out, cooking and experimenting. And over the course of the last 40 years of marketing red meat, the competition's got just a little bit hotter, and it's very hard to see. I'm sorry, it's a very dark image. But what you can see there is local beef, Arabic lamb, New Zealand lamb, Australian lamb. Country of origin is ever present when consumers are making choices in our export markets. And certainly our friends in New Zealand and Canada have upped the ante with respect to their marketing efforts. And the reality is, as a service provider to industry, there are many, many competing demands for our marketing dollars, which includes ensuring that we have strong consumer and community support for our industry here in Australia. So we need to be prudent, and supporting lots and lots of brands across lots and lots of markets may not have been the best use of our levy dollars. So the case for change was clear. One common, value-added reputation for Australian beef and lamb across all markets. So in building a global brand, a simple principle: we need to think global, establish a clear proposition for the brand. And what does proposition mean? We need to be really, really clear who we're targeting. We need to be really clear on what the benefits are for that consumer. And we need to be absolutely confident that what we promise, we can deliver on. Equally, we need to act locally. So we've got a big idea for a common proposition or a common platform, but we need to be able to execute it in a way, in a market, that makes sense to local conditions. So moving on, we had a look at what was happening in the broader market. We then needed to consider what's going on with consumers. And our brand development started with a review of mega trends. And I note, just listening to all speakers this morning, that the one that I've circled there, sustainability and ethics, looking at a number of developed and developing markets, you'll see that a key driver for food choice is sustainability and ethics. And we've seen some good definitions of those this morning. Health and wellness is also important. So that was some review of mega trends for food, but drilling down into red meat specifically, our research uncovered a few more insights. Sustainability, same message coming through. Fearless food, the confidence to know where the food has come from. And last but not least, feel-good food. I'll touch on each one very quickly. Sustainability, this awareness and consideration around environmental issues for food. We have a stat here, 83% of consumers expect the companies whose products they buy to be taking steps to avoid damaging the environment. We've seen a growth in this trend because of increasing levels of pollution and increasing distrust in some of the claims that are being made by industries. Food without fear. We've spoken about this already this morning. Products that are guaranteed safe from farm to fork. And 58% of consumers feeling the need to manage their risks. Why have we seen this grow as a driver? Well, there's been breaches of supply the world over. Got increasing levels of pollution. On a more positive note, we're seeing increasing willingness to pay for food, where there is people can be confident in the integrity behind the product. And increasing distrust of foreign food. Now, this is not from an Australian lens, this is looking at some of the key export markets for Australian red meat. And just looking at health and wellness, there are lots of different things sitting underneath this trend. On the left-hand side there, what is a sign of success or accomplishment? And in our key North Asian markets of Japan, Korea and China, being physically fit and in good health is actually a better sign, or a higher, more people would say that is a sign of success than having money. Equally, under this same banner of health and well-being, we're seeing obesity emerging as a major concern in a number of our export markets. We know that with the shift to a Western diet, the calorie consumption in many of our Asian markets is 40% higher today than it was in 1980. So we understand the mega trends, and we understand the trends, the key trends for Australian red meat. But above all else, if we're going to make a change, if we're going to introduce a brand, if we're going to go to the trouble of putting that brand on pack and we're going to communicate it, we've got to do so with a very clear, true north. We must create value for industry. So what does that mean? Can we command more dollars for each animal? Or can we create more demand and ultimately more dollars? So with all this in mind, the True Aussie brand was developed on 3 pillars, and I'll just take the time to talk you through the 3 of those. The first one is the ideal home. Australia, there's no better place on earth to raise beef and lamb. Our unique climate and environment allows our animals to live in a natural state year-round and ensure consistent supply. Our remoteness provides natural protection from disease, and our wide open spaces allow us to produce sustainably. That's that pillar, the ideal home. Peace of mind. In Australia, we're passionately focused on maintaining the highest levels of food safety and quality control. A reliable and responsible industry, our product is trusted wherever it is found. And pure enjoyment. The first 2 pillars are quite rational. The third pillar is more emotional, enjoyment. Australian beef and lamb makes a great diversity of healthy and enjoyable meals. We enrich the lives of people around the globe. So you can see from the information and the trends in consumer insights how the True Aussie brand proposition has been built. So in taking that to market, we had a global or a common brand positioning. It's been customised for local market conditions. To help us do that, so True Aussie can appear as a brand in and of its own right, but we'll often sit aside a producer or an exporter's brand. So we have a co-marketing program. We undertook a lot of seminars to introduce this brand to the Australian red meat industry. And to date, we've got 18 licences issued, appearing on over 80 brands across 22 countries. So taking that principle of thinking global and acting local, here are some examples of what we needed to do to ensure the launch of the brand was a success in 2 of our key markets. So we have examples of the True Aussie Beef logo in Korea and the True Aussie Beef logo in Japan. We had some very, very strong brands or trust marks in Japan and Korea, and it was important that we were able to successfully transition consumers from one brand to the other. In thinking global and acting local, it's very, very important that our marketing activities respond to the channels that are most important for Australian red meat and the communication channels that are relevant to market. So behind me, in looking to Korea, we know that Facebook is a key means by which consumers gain information and recommendation from each other. So we needed to communicate True Aussie on Facebook. 7-Eleven are an enormous convenience chain in Korea, and there is enormous growth in convenience meals with more and more women in the workforce. So partnering with 7-Eleven to have cost-effective mass media and television communications. I know it's a little bit dark, but example of the True Aussie logos on pack. It's also important that our marketing activities reflect local retailing conventions. In Australia, sampling product is one of the most expensive and in many cases one of the least effective marketing programs. In Korea, this is a trade convention for the consumer to feel confident in the taste and the integrity. She needs to taste the product close to point of purchase. Turning to the US now, a very distinct market from Asia, and in quite a different stage of development for the Australian red meat industry, we still see sustainability and well-being as core themes. And behind me I have some examples. Feel good, taking the mantle from better for you in appealing to customers. Okay, so sustainability, feeling good about our food choices as well as what we're eating. And the way we've seen the feel good emerge in the US is through significant rise in the demand for grass-fed beef. Now, those of you who've been to the US market and have tasted a steak in the US would know that grain-fed is certainly the most dominant dominant eating experience. But there's something about the words grass-fed. You know, it's conjuring up all sorts of imagery for Americans. And even though they may not like the taste of grass-fed as much as they like the taste of grain-fed, grass-fed, feeling good, conjuring up images of sustainability. We're seeing significant growth. We're seeing grass-fed burgers on menu. We're seeing grass-fed mentions in Mexican, and certainly a rise in grass-fed steaks. You know, capturing and working within this trend, we've adopted some of our marketing materials, promoting grass-fed beef, promoting True Aussie grass-fed, and dialing up the attributes of nutrition and getting people to think a little bit differently about the role lean grass-fed beef can play in their diets. So if everything we do, we stop and evaluate, has this been successful? Has it been successful in driving consumer awareness of Australian beef and lamb? And has it been successful in driving positive associations? And earlier today we saw some examples of the types of positive associations the Red Tractor team have experienced. For us in Korea, we've had significant increases in associations that Australian beef and lamb is safe, Australian beef is natural, Australian beef is tasty. So significant improvements on the back of the True Aussie marketing efforts. And in the US, with a real focus around True Aussie and True Aussie grass-fed, we've nearly seen a doubling in exports to the US in the last 12 months. So just in closing, just helping you understand our journey on building the True Aussie brand. What's so important in everything we do is that we do start with the consumer and we understand their beliefs, their attitudes and their behaviours and how that informs strategy development. And I think for this group today in thinking about label development or in addressing consumer concerns, that it should always start with the consumer, their beliefs and their attitudes and how that will inform strategy. What we do know across developed and developing markets is that consumers do seek peace of mind, that middle pillar of True Aussie. They want absolute confidence in the product they're buying. They are concerned about sustainability in that very broad sense, and they are concerned about food safety. So the True Aussie brand was developed to position Australian red meat against those consumer needs. And to date, thinking global and acting local is starting to deliver some very positive results for the True Aussie brand and for Australian red meat. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.